Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Bear and Wolf podcast, otherwise known as Two Guys Saying Stupid Stuff. Too smart guy? Well, smart with a question mark. So you can decide after listening to this. But welcome, Wolf.
Hey, Bear, good to be here. Sorry I'm a little late. I just got out of the shower and I was waiting for my hair to dry.
Indeed. We won't dive into that any further right now, but we'll hope that you haven't been all dried off now. So, yes.
Indeed, I am.
Well, good. Good. Being dry is a good thing. I'll drink to that.
It is better than
So, what's that?
it is better than being moist.
Well, in most cases, it is true, yes. But, well, anyway, I can see this taking a dark turn, so we'll bring it back from there. So, you had a topic you wanted to talk about tonight, right?
I did. So let's start off on a little bit of a serious note here. In order to do this, you're going to have to bear with me a minute. I need to climb onto my soapbox. It's a little
Nice
ways
sound effect.
there. All right.
Can't go over the hill, got to go up the hill, I can't go under.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would like to talk a little bit about what made massive global news earlier this week when the Ukrainian president, Vladimir Zelensky, sat in on a press conference with President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. For those of you that live under a rock, President Zelensky is the president of Ukraine. Ukraine has been at war for just over 3 years when Russia unlawfully invaded them. And he has been soliciting assistance from the West, essentially Europe and the United States, to help him stave off this invasion. I believe Russia felt that they could have accomplished full takeover of the country in under a week, and it has now gone on for 3 years. And really, at this point, they're at a stalemate. So one of the things that Donald Trump ran on was that he could end this war within 24 hours of being in the Oval Office.
That first day. Yep.
Yep. So here we are, 3 months.
6 weeks or so?
Or yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like 6 weeks. Yeah,
the war's still raging.
Uh-huh.
So Donald Trump attended a meeting with Russia in Saudi Arabia. Well, the U.S. attended a meeting with Russia and Saudi Arabia. Donald Trump didn't go. I think Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, did.
Uh-huh.
And they discussed terms of a peace deal. And interestingly, Ukraine was not in attendance. Then President Donald Trump told Ukraine that they needed to pay us back for the billions of dollars in aid that we have given them, and that we would take payment in the form of minerals that Ukraine has.
Mineral rights, yeah.
Mineral rights.
Yeah.
One of those minerals being, I believe, plutonium or uranium. And so that they would do that. And so Volodymyr Zelensky came in from the Ukraine under, at least from what we were told in the American media, to sign this deal. So during the press conference, J.D. Vance made a comment that the only way to solve this is through diplomacy, that it will not be resolved any other way. And, understanding that English is President Zelensky's second language, but he speaks it very well.
He does.
He had asked the vice president, well, with all due respect, when you say diplomacy, Russia has not abided by any terms and any agreements that we have made in the past. What
Right.
makes you think they're going to abide by this now? And I am paraphrasing, so, what
Because
the,
basically we tried diplomacy with Russia. We tried it multiple times, and they never went for it.
right. What diplomacy do you speak of?
Right. What do you think's going to change? But-
Right. And so what happened there is it started to de-evolve or just devolve. I think it's
Devolve.
devolve. It started to devolve into a shouting match where, from the sound bites that I heard, I did not watch this live, but the sound bites that I heard were, you have not thanked us in this meeting. J.D. Vance said that. President Trump said, you don't hold the cards. In other words, what he was saying in a way that wasn't immediately apparent, I don't think, to President Zelensky, is that you were not in a position of power to bargain here. But he was using colloquial statements.
Right. Well, that's the only thing he knows how to say.
Right.
So,
Gambling, that kind of thing.
that kind of thing. Right.
Right.
But
And
they were doing the yelling. I don't think Zelensky was doing the yelling.
he was not. He was not.
He was trying to get a word in edgewise, but
Right. And then, Trump told him that he was, that he'd said too much already and all of that. And all he did, from what I saw, was express a concern that any agreement they make, Russia's not going to abide by. That is based on history, what has happened. So,
yeah.
but what does this mean? Oh, right. Well, hold on. So then after that, the meeting was ended. Trump made a comment that it was going to be great television. And it was. I will admit that was good television. The entire world saw it. And then J.D. Vance was escorted to another room in the White House where he was shortly thereafter asked to leave.
No. You said J.D. Vance was escorted.
Oh,
Zelensky was escorted.
Yes, Zelensky was escorted, not J.D. Vance. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then he was asked to leave. Okay.
Right.
So what does that mean? Well, if you remember, you and I had been discussing, I don't think we did this on a podcast. I think it was just a personal discussion about one of the risks of Donald Trump coming into office, being that he would basically greenlight Russia to take Ukraine.
Uh-huh.
Putin is on record as criticizing Gorbachev for the breakup of the USSR. Putin is a known history buff of Russian history. And
He's a former KGB agent too, right?
yes, he's a former KGB agent, and he's also the creator of the FSB, which is the modern-day KGB.
Yeah.
And he is also known to be a fan of the Russian czars and the empire, and there has been discussion in the media as to whether he is A, trying to bring the USSR back, or B, trying to set himself up to be the next czar of Russia, or C, all of the above.
All of the above. I think it's all of the above. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so if you take a look at what the lines were prior to the Berlin Wall coming down and with Gorbachev and all of that, right? So you had Russia and Poland. You had Russia in what was then the Czech Republic, the Balkan areas. You had Russia in East Germany, right? Many of these countries are all now members of NATO. NATO obviously didn't exist back then. And when NATO was created, it was created after World War II. I believe in the 50s is when they created it. One of the advantages of being a member of NATO and what makes it powerful is Article 5. And Article 5 of the pact says, if you attack one of us, you attack all of us. Okay. So the question is, let's say Russia takes Ukraine, and there's a good chance that's going to happen. Will Putin stop there?
No.
Will he not set his eyes on Poland? Poland is a member of NATO. So let's say that that he does a false flag operation into Poland, and Poland invokes Article 5. The U.S. is now, by treaty, obligated to send military supplies and personnel to defend Eastern Europe. Unless
they just forget the treaty.
Ignore it. Yeah, unless the U.S. were to bow out of NATO, or just say we're not doing that, and then to be kicked out of NATO.
Well, he's already kind of set the stage for that, right, in saying that the other countries aren't paying their fair share and all that. So he's
very critical.
If there's a cynical way of looking at it, to say he's already setting the stage for an exit based off of the whole they're not paying their share of things there, so we're not going to support them, which then, of course, plays along with Putin's book. But anyway,
right.
I digress.
Well, no, but that's very important. So what does that mean to us here that have this nice ocean between us, using Zelensky's word? We have this nice ocean separating us. What does that mean for us? Well, no country is an island. And the thing about Article 5 is that it protects everybody. Everyone, right? So if someone were to invade us, all of Europe would send supplies and military to support us. The U.S. military cannot stop a full-fledged invasion of this country in its earliest forms. Eventually, we can put up a resistance. Our borders are porous. We are vulnerable on two coasts. We are vulnerable from the air, as everybody is. And so...
And we've now pissed off Canada. We've pissed off Mexico. So
exactly, right?
They're not going to be inclined to help us.
We have alienated all of our allies. We are setting ourselves out onto an island, and our adversaries see this. The other side effect of what happened is it has reunified Western Europe to support Ukraine.
I agree with that, yep.
And solidified. And it is going to cause, I've already heard statements, Germany needs to figure out how to break its dependence on the United States. I think all of our major allies, France, the UK, are all beginning to understand that the U.S. is no longer the stalwart ally that they once were, and that they need to stop relying so much on our military might and our resources to keep them safe. And I think what we're going to see is that at some point in the future, we're going to be hung out to dry. And, understand that there's only 4 years in office. This is his second term. And barring anything unconstitutional.
Shenanigans,
yeah, barring anything unconstitutional, there will be a peaceful transfer of power in 4 years. I am hoping that the powers that be, regardless of their political alignings, recognize the risk and the danger and vote in where they put the interests of the nation in front of their own. Because
I agree with you. I have that same hope. Unfortunately, I haven't seen any evidence among, let's say, the core Republicans, the core people support Trump, or even on the periphery. Unless it is something that affects them, I haven't seen any inclination to steer away from Trump's influence or Trump's stupid decisions. But, yeah.
Right. It hasn't gotten better. But right now, these are concepts that at one point were abstract, now maybe not as much, but they're not reality yet, right? I mean, Russia hasn't totally taken Ukraine yet. They haven't started another European war yet, or a war with NATO yet. These things haven't happened yet. But we are setting the stage so that they could. In that meeting, Donald Trump had looked at Zelensky and said, "You wanted to be a tough guy, so we made you a tough guy." Now, this is interesting to me, right? This is interesting because I have read I can't remember the sources, and this is over the past, 8 plus, or actually the past 12 years, if you get down into when he first announced he was running, or however long it's been.
Yeah.
He has always admired someone that comes from a position of strength, right? So he admires Vladimir Putin because Vladimir Putin is a tough guy. He admires Kim Jong-il because Kim Jong-il is a tough guy, right? Trump sees himself as a tough guy.
I think he sees himself as whatever he has to avoid staying out of jail and to avoid being relegated there too. I mean, tough, yeah, but he, at some level, I mean, even like it was like I've heard when they were talking about the Western European folks, rallying around Zelensky, whether it's true or not, they were saying, that he was complaining, oh yeah, this was supposed to be my Nobel Prize by getting the war ended and stuff like that. So he's all about whatever benefits him in whatever situation.
Yes, he is a massive narcissist. And, anything that puts him in the good light, he thinks that he is going to come out at the end of this as the greatest president ever to lead this country. And maybe at the end of 4 years, that'll be the case.
It will not be the case.
Well, it's the term greatest is subjective.
No, it's not. No, it's like saying Hitler was the greatest leader of Germany. No,
I'm just telling you, this is what he wants. This is what
I'm saying. Yeah, but I mean, it's things like, even the things he's doing now. I mean, it's set so many things in motion, so many things he doesn't realize. For example, there was discussions about that, Russia and China are starting to look at fired workers, federal workers who have knowledge as potential assets, what they can do to recruit them.
Absolutely.
I just heard on the news that the premier of Ontario, Canada, is threatening that if the tariffs go through, that Canada will be shutting off power that comes from Canada to the United States. So, I mean, that's the thing. These actions, at some level, you could argue that taken to, at some level where they were studied, where there was an effective plan, where there's understanding the repercussions, that's these things like, thinning out government could be a good thing. It's what Republicans have stood for a long time. But it's the idea of doing this without understanding the repercussions, without understanding if you do this, this is going to cause this. If you impose tariffs, this is going to cost Americans money. If you piss off Canada and Mexico, you are lessening our security. It's this whole idea of, well, if we do tariffs and the companies are going to have to, go to building stuff and doing stuff in the United States, maybe, but how long does that take? How long does that take to get things built, to get, production shifted, to get workers now that are going to do these same kinds of jobs for the same kinds of pay and that kinds of things as we were getting when they were in a different country. So it's like, it just is a shoot first, ask questions later sort of strategy.
Well, to some extent, I think there is some level of rhyme and reason. I think he uses the threat of tariffs as a bargaining chip to get people to come to the table. And that I think he's thinking that we can outlast them. And now, did he consider the fact that Canada might shut off flow of electricity or other, energy sources to the United States? Maybe, maybe not. Will he deal with the repercussions of that? Absolutely, he will. Because, the majority in the U.S., the voting majority elected him as president. It is, and I'm assuming that the majority of the people affected by these decisions are his base. These are the people that voted for him, because those that didn't are in the minority. And so that majority, his base, is going to be affected, and they will have to decide for themselves how they feel about the actions that he's taking and how much they are willing to put up with, because the less than 2 years away.
All right, so this brings up an interesting point while we're talking about this. And I don't want to derail you from your original conversation, but it does bring up an interesting point. If the people who, if we assume at some level, the people who voted for Trump did not pay attention, either did not pay attention or did not believe that what Trump said he would do or what he's planned to do would affect them, is that some sort of a, I don't know if cognitive dissonance is the right way to say it, but some sort of a blind spot that they have, and so is expecting them to actually change and become aware and acknowledge that this is a problem and this is a situation that they should change their opinion about their voting. Is that something we can reasonably expect from people who are so ingrained in sort of the follow the leader mentality there?
Well, let's put it this way. Today we have electricity, you and I.
Yes.
Tomorrow we don't. And we don't have electricity because our electricity comes from our northern neighbor, Canada.
Uh-huh.
Canada stopped supplying us electricity because Trump imposed a 25% tariff on all their goods. Right? So do I blame Canada for shutting electricity off? Or do I blame the reason why they shut the electricity off, the tariffs?
Right, but I'm still saying I don't know how to put this. For the people who did not spend the time and the energy to really understand what Trump stood for,
that's
what he was bringing in,
the voting group.
Right. Is it reasonable to expect that even in the next 4 years, no matter how bad it gets, that they are going to change their opinion of him? Or is it going to be that there's a learned sort of victim mentality where it was the previous administration's fault? It was something else that happened there too. That's what I'm getting at. Is there enough people that you could reasonably expect to objectively look at the situation? And if they so objectively looked at it and said, this doesn't make sense anymore, to actually change their mind and act on it? Or is it simply a case of, we don't want to think about this. We don't want to, doesn't matter what people say or what happens. There's a religious almost belief in there about it.
And I get you. I think the religious almost belief is probably a minority of the majority. I think that is a subset.
I hope so.
I believe so. I don't know many that are fanatical about the president or were during the campaign. The people that I know that voted for him did so primarily for reasons of the economy. Now, the reality is, in his first 4 years, the stock market broke records. The economy was rebounding right up until COVID hit, right? And then when COVID hit, that was a way, everything went downhill, and that wasn't Trump's fault, although, some will say that there were decisions that the U.S. made that hindered the recovery process, and that's up for debate, but, that's old ground. But, the reality is that COVID impacted the economy. Prior to that, the economy was doing quite well. Under Biden, he was eventually able to stop the bleeding and then start getting the economy back on track to a certain extent, but then inflation happened. And of course, inflation is the sign of a strong economy. right?
Uh-huh.
Because the more money people have, the more prices of everything goes up, right? So then we have inflation. So now he's dealing with that, and that was a major part of his platform, is that the current economic state was because of the previous administration. Said every administration ever.
Right, right. I mean, there's the old joke, right? It's like I forget what it was. It's like a manager comes in and in his office he finds like three envelopes from the previous manager, and so they're like, and then he gets a note and says, okay, in your desk you'll see three envelopes, and if you get into trouble, just open the envelopes and use whatever it says in there, do what it says in there. So he gets a bad situation one day at the company and comes in and he gets, well, in a pickle there, and he pulls out one of the envelopes and it opens up and it says, blame previous management, which is one of the first things. So he's like, okay, I'll blame previous management. And then he comes, gets a couple months down the line, gets into a worse situation at his job and pulls out the other envelope and it's like, blame the economy. It's like, all right, I don't blame the economy. That's what it is. So his superiors say, okay, yeah, it wasn't your fault what you did. You didn't mismanage. Gets into 6 months down the road, the worst situation company. He's really screwed stuff up. Goes and pulls out that final third envelope, opens it up, and it says, prepare 3 envelopes.
Put him pump. Oh, wait. Hold on. There we go.
But my point is, to your point, yeah, blame the previous administration there too. But there is something, I mean, there are cause and effect. Like today, announcing the tariffs, and the stock market dropped, I think, 800 at one point, but it went back up some too, to 650 down now. So, there are certain things that have a pretty straightforward cause and effect. Now, do they think that announcing tariffs would cause the stock market to drop? I don't know. Do they even consider that? I don't know.
So I had read somewhere that someone was complaining, why doesn't Zelensky wear a suit to the White House?
Oh, that was somebody who was standing there in the office. Now, one of the gossip things was like it was Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend or something. I don't know. But yes, there was somebody, not J.D. Vance, not Trump, who was asking about that. Yes.
Right. And so, I look at that and I'll say, okay, well, this is a wartime commander-in-chief that actually has to fortify the place where he leads the country from with armed personnel and sandbags from missiles and so forth. And he is going around asking allies for military help. It seems appropriate to me that he wear wartime-related attire. The question I have is, how come no one complained when Elon Musk stood beside the president wearing a blazer and a T-shirt and a pair of jeans as he was talking about cuts? How is that not disrespecting the
I know, and had his kid in the office and everything else. I mean, it's not. That's what I'm saying. I agree with you that his attire was appropriate. And the other thing that occurred to me was he is probably much more relatable to his men wearing that kind of attire than trying to dress up in some sort of a suit there too. Right. But that gets back to my point, is like, do these people in these administration, the U.S. administration, even think about this? What point does it matter whether or not somebody has worn a suit? What point does it matter whether or not somebody said thank you? This has never been something that you would even broach in any kind of formal setting. Even at their worst in previous administrations, there was decorum, or at least the appearance of decorum from what we saw. I'm sure there were things that went on in the back end.
Well, so, to wrap this up, I think that if the big orange boob and the merkin from Ohio don't figure out how to communicate effectively with our allies and not alienate them, then we are going to find ourselves in a situation where we may be the ones asking for help in the future.
I agree with you. And
Hold on, let me get off my soapbox.
and kids, for those who didn't catch it, there's a vocabulary word in there to look up to. So anyway, probably the one word you didn't know. So leave it at that. Is that you getting off your soapbox?
Yeah, I'm walking down the stairs from the soapbox.
Thought you had a ghost in your house or something.
No, that was the door that goes to the soapbox, to the lectern.
Great.